I'd been hiking for days through the dense woods of Pennsylvania, far beyond the reach of cell service and the occasional hiker. This was just a solo camping trip to clear my head, to get away from everything. I didn't intend for it to be anything more than a simple fishing and camping trip, a few days spent alone in the woods. My father used to talk about when he'd spin his wild stories from his younger years. He'd often tell me about hunting trips, fishing excursions, and encounters with creatures. He had this way of making everything sound so real, but I never thought much of it at the time. But things had started to feel. And now, looking back, I'm not sure I'll ever be able to shake that feeling. The farther I went, the more I realized just how isolated I truly was, and the more the weight of that isolation began to settle on my shoulders. The first sign something was wrong came when the fish stopped biting. I had been out here enough to know when the fish were active and when they weren't. But for a solid day, nothing. No nibbles, no jumps, just a stillness in the water that felt unnatural. I figured it was just a bad day. Maybe the water temperature was off, or the fish had moved elsewhere. But as the hours passed, a gnawing sense of unease started creeping in. I wasn't a stranger to the woods. I'd grown up hunting, fishing, and camping with my father. But this place was different. It wasn't like the areas I was used to. This was dense forest, blocking out most of the sunlight. The underbrush was thick, with brush and dead leaves, making every step feel like a struggle. It was the kind of place that made you feel small, insignificant, like nature was a force much bigger than you. By the second day, the buzzing began. It wasn't constant at first, just a strange, intermittent hum. I thought it might be some kind of insect, maybe a swarm of bees or something equally mundane. But it didn't sound like bees. It was a low, almost mechanical buzz, vibrating through the trees. I tried to ignore it, focusing on my fishing line, but it grew louder, more insistent. That evening, as the sun dipped below, I decided to call it a day, and I was exhausted from the hike. I set up my tent near the edge of a small clearing, a place where I could hear the stream running nearby. The buzz had quieted. After starting a small fire, I cooked my dinner, all while the hairs on the back of my neck stood on end. Every now and then, I'd glance over, expecting to see someone or something lurking just out of sight. But I never saw anything. Night settled in fast, and I retreated into my tent. As I lay there, staring at the ceiling of my tent, I heard it again, the buzz. But this time, it was different. It wasn't coming from the forest. It was coming from above. I froze, listening intently. The buzz came in waves. It was like a constant hum, punctuated by sharp bursts of static, growing louder by the second. Panic crept up my spine. It wasn't normal. I grabbed my flashlight and flicked it on, shining it toward the roof of the tent. Nothing. But that buzzing, it was getting closer. I reached for the pistol I kept tucked into my pack, a safety precaution in case of wild animals. Maybe it was a drone or some kind of equipment from a nearby logging operation. The next thing I knew, my tent lit up with an unnatural glow. It was just a faint light filtering through the fabric. But then, the light grew brighter, impossibly bright, like someone had taken a floodlight and pointed it straight at my tent. The buzzing stopped altogether. I crawled to the edge of the tent, heart hammering in my chest, and peeked out. What I saw made my blood run cold. A bright light was shining down from the sky. It wasn't a flashlight or a lamp. This was something else entirely. I didn't know what to think. I couldn't think. I reached for my gun, fingers trembling as I gripped the handle. If this was some kind of human activity, if it was someone with a spotlight or searchlight, I wasn't going to wait around to find out. Then, just as quickly as it had appeared, the light vanished. I didn't wait to see what would happen next. I just started running. I needed to get away from that light, from whatever was out there in the woods with me. I don't know how long I ran, but eventually, I found myself in a small ravine, hidden from view. I crouched there, gasping for breath. I don't know if the buzzing ever stopped or if the light came back. But I do know one thing. I wasn't alone out there. I quickly made my way back to civilization. The authorities never found anything, no signs of a person, nothing unusual. And I swear, something is still out there, maybe. I don't know what it was we saw that night, but it messed with us. Messed with me, but I'm telling you right now, maybe you won't believe it. It was early, too early, maybe 4 a.m. Maybe a little later. We were on the road, heading up the long stretch through Michigan's Upper Peninsula. A logging crew out in the middle of nowhere. I don't know why we were out there at that hour, but that's the way it worked sometimes. We had work to do. I was in the lead truck with Coop, and the others were behind us, their engines growling in the cold. I wasn't paying much attention to the road, just trying to shake the exhaustion from my eyes. I hadn't slept in a couple days, and the fog in my head wasn't helping. But then we saw him. There was a guy walking down the road, all by himself. I don't know what the hell he was doing out there. No one does. He was wearing nothing but a thin shirt, no jacket, no gloves, not a damn thing for the freezing cold. It's bitter out there. Your breath freezes up in seconds, and you'd be dead in minutes if you weren't dressed right. But this guy, he was just walking down the road, like the cold wasn't even touching him. Coop slammed on the brakes. We all came to a stop, tires kicking up snow. The eye could barely see his face, just the shape of him moving in the night. I don't know why we stopped. I guess we all thought the same thing, he was out of his damn mind or something. It was no place to be, and he looked like he could use some help. We rolled down the window, called out to him, but he didn't answer. He didn't even acknowledge us. It was like he was in another world. I don't know how to explain it. Like he was made of stone or something. No emotion, no fear. I stepped out of the truck and walked toward him. Coop didn't like it, but I figured we'd better do something. The guy wasn't responding to our calls, and it felt wrong just sitting there. When I reached him, I tried to grab his arm, just to get his attention, to see if he was okay. Maybe he was high or something. That's when things got ugly. The instant my hand touched his arm, it was like flipping a switch. The guy whipped around faster than any normal person could. I swear, his grip was cold, ice cold, and he locked onto my arm with a strength that shouldn't have been possible.
His fingers dug into my skin, and I felt like I was being crushed under the weight of his rage.
I jerked back, but he held on like a vice. Coop yelled from the truck, but it didn't do any good. The guy's eyes, I'll never forget them. The rage in them, it wasn't natural. It was like he wanted to tear me apart. I finally got my arm loose, but that's when the real nightmare started. The guy didn't stop. He started running beside the truck, moving faster. I'm not talking about a jog or anything normal. This was some unnatural shit. His legs didn't even look like they were working the way they should have. He was moving like something out of a nightmare, just gliding, keeping up with the truck as we started moving again. I don't know what the hell he was. Whatever he was, it wasn't human. It was too fast, too strong, too wrong. Coop gunned it. We tore down that, but no matter how fast we went, the guy stayed right there, running alongside us. It was like he was following us, like he knew exactly where we were going. We hit another gear, trying to outrun him. And then we hit the next bend. I thought we'd lost him. I managed to break free. My heart was pounding so hard it was trying to escape my chest. I slammed the door shut, and Coop punched the gas, finally getting the hell out of there. We didn't say anything for a while. No one knew what to say, what to make of what had just happened. What kind of person in the middle of nowhere, in the freezing cold? We made the call. Told the gods, told the authorities. I don't even know why we bothered, but we did. It was the right thing to do, right? Report what we saw. But when the cops went out there, they didn't find a man. No signs of anyone being there at all. I don't know what that thing was. We never figured it out. I don't know if it was a man, a spirit, or some kind of monster. So, if you're ever out there or anywhere in the isolation, don't get out of your truck. Just drive the hell away. Because what I saw that night was something strange. Those days I needed to clear my head, and I thought that a week out in the wilderness would do the trick. So, I convinced my friends, Matt, Nick, and Jared, to join me on a hunting trip deep in the Rockies. We didn't come for anything fancy, just a simple cabin in the woods, a few tents, and enough supplies to last a week. No one had a particular agenda, but I think we all hoped for the same thing, a chance to disconnect and feel the rawness of nature. We packed our gear, loaded it into the truck, and drove up to the Colorado wilderness. We were miles away from the nearest town, maybe further. No distractions, just the mountains and the woods. We set up camp near a creek. We unpacked, set up the tents, and started preparing for the next day's hunt. It felt good to be out there, free of the grind. The only thing that stood between us and total peace was the uncertainty of what lay ahead. But we didn't think much of it. In fact, the whole trip felt like a dream, a break from the grind. That was until the storm rolled in. We were huddled under a tarp by the fire, a small pit we'd set up for cooking and keeping warm. Matt had been roasting some venison, the smell mixing with the wood smoke in the damp air. It wasn't exactly clear skies when we set up camp, but no one expected a storm to hit so fast. At first, it was just the wind picking up. Then the clouds rolled in, thick and heavy, swallowing up the stars above. We looked at each other, exchanging confused glances. The temperature dropped faster than we expected, and the first crack of thunder made us all jump. I stood up, pulling my jacket tight around me, feeling the bite of the wind on my skin. Nick cursed under his breath. The fire was barely a flicker now, the rain falling hard, cold sheets of it battering the tarp above us. We had to make a quick decision. We couldn't just sit there in the middle of the storm. The creek was rising, and the wind howled through the trees. It felt like the world was closing in around us. We threw what we could into the tents, trying to secure the gear, but the storm wasn't going to give us a break. The tarp above us strained under the weight of the water. Matt shouted over the roar of the storm, telling us to grab whatever we could and get to cover. We all made a mad dash for the tents, but by the time we reached them, the rain was already turning everything into a muddy mess. The cold air stung as I zipped up the tent, the walls already soaked. But that's when things started to get weird. The storm had completely swallowed us, the wind howling, the rain coming down like a hammer. I was sitting in the corner of my tent, listening to the rain beat against the canvas, trying to calm my thoughts. That's when I heard it, a rustling sound, something heavy moving in the brush. My heart stopped. I wasn't the only one who heard it. Nick, Jared, and Matt had all gone quiet, their eyes wide with that same dread starting to build in the pit of my stomach. The trees were heavy with rain, but the sound of footsteps wasn't coming from the direction of the wind. It was something else, footsteps, moving quickly, almost purposefully. And that's when he appeared. Out of nowhere, from the thick trees and the shadows of the storm, a man walked into the clearing. My first thought was that it had to be someone from a nearby cabin, a local maybe, just seeking shelter from the storm. But there was something off about him. He was tall, thin, and dressed in a ragged coat that looked completely out of place for the conditions. His face was gaunt, and his eyes were wild, wide, and locked onto us with an unsettling intensity. And the thing that really set me on edge was the rifle slung across his back. Not an ordinary rifle. It looked old. "Hey, you all right?" Matt called out first, trying to sound calm, but I could hear the tremble in his voice. His hand was already gripping his own rifle, but he wasn't aiming it. He was just holding it like a shield. The man didn't respond. He just stood there, staring at us, his grin widening an unnerving, toothy smile that made my skin crawl. "Lost?" Nick asked. He nodded slowly, but his eyes didn't blink. Been wandering around for hours, he muttered.
His voice was low, scratchy, couldn't find my way.
You got a fire. It didn't make sense. How could anyone wander around the woods in this kind of storm and not get lost? And why was he so calm about it? He didn't seem scared. He seemed more disoriented. And that grin, it was just off. I didn't trust this guy, but at the same time, I didn't want to turn him away into the storm. Not in this weather. Not with a rifle on his back. Yeah, we've got a fire, Matt said. He motioned for the man to come closer. You can get out of the rain, but I don't know what you're doing out here. The man didn't seem to care about the questions. He just shuffled closer, his eyes still fixed on us, and he lowered himself to sit beside the tarp. He didn't say anything else, just stared at the fire, his hands folded in his lap. The atmosphere had shifted from confusion to tension. Where's your car? Jared asked, after a long silence. How did you get out here? The man blinked slowly. I don't know. I was just hiking. Got lost. Wandered off the trail. Just hiking. Nick scoffed, but he couldn't hide the edge in his voice. You walked all the way out here in this storm. The man just nodded, still grinning. It was all so weird. He didn't seem like a guy who had just gotten lost. His behavior, his demeanor, it was too calm for someone in the middle of the woods in a storm. I don't mean to be a bother, he said after a moment, the grin on his face still stretching unnaturally wide. But could you give me a ride back to my car? I wanted to say no. I wanted to tell him to get the hell out of our camp and leave us alone. But the words wouldn't come. We didn't know what to do. He didn't seem dangerous, but everything about him screamed that we should be careful. Maybe it was just the isolation, but this felt like more. You got a car nearby? Matt asked cautiously. The man nodded, still grinning. Yeah, about a mile or so. Just follow the trail. Without another word, we stood up. None of us said anything as we grabbed our gear. The man stood with us, still watching us with those hollow eyes, the grin never wavering. The ride back to his car was uneventful. The tension didn't break, though, and the man didn't say much after that. He just looked out the window, grinning. When we dropped him off, we didn't even wait to watch him leave. We just turned around and drove back to camp, our minds filled with questions we couldn't answer. But I'll tell you this, I've never felt that uneasy in the woods. There's something about the deep woods that gets under your skin. It's not just the isolation or the silence that'll rattle you. It's the way the forest seems to have a life of its own, like it's watching you, waiting for you to make a mistake. You don't realize it at first. It was late in the afternoon. It was supposed to be a peaceful stop, just the lake and the forest. I didn't have any particular plan, no deadline to meet, just a few hours of quiet. That's the kind of thing you seek out when you've been running your entire life. Just a minute to breathe. But I didn't get that. No, it never works like that. The air was cold, even for June in the Appalachian Mountains, and the waters smooth as glass reflected the thick canopy of trees surrounding the lake. The whole damn place looked like something out of a dream. I was sitting there, enjoying the time when I suddenly noticed the sound of a powerful engine cutting through the quietness. When I looked, I saw headlights through the trees coming toward the parking lot. I didn't pay it much mind at first. Just some guy passing through, probably here for the same reason I was looking for a break from the world. But then the truck pulled in, and I froze. It wasn't the normal kind of truck you'd expect to see out here. This one was loud. Too loud. The driver didn't even slow down as they made a sharp turn into the parking lot. The truck revved hard, spinning its tires and sending up a cloud of smoke like something out of a street race. The noise was so damn jarring that it almost felt like a punch in the gut. The driver didn't stop, didn't look around, didn't seem to care that they were making a racket in the middle of nowhere. The truck stayed there for a few seconds, its engine roaring before the driver finally stomped on the gas and tore out of the parking lot. I don't know why, but my gut tightened. It felt wrong, like something was off. I shook my head, trying to get rid of the feeling, and went back to watching the lake. But I couldn't shake it, and that's when I heard it again. The rumble of the engine, distant at first, but coming back toward me. My stomach churned. The truck came back. Same damn truck. This time, it didn't go right for the parking lot. It parked at an overlook just a little ways up the hill. I couldn't see much of the driver. The engine was still idling, but the driver didn't get out, didn't move. Nothing. Just sat there. The unease was palpable now. I watched the truck for minutes. Then, the engine revved again. The tires screamed as they tore off, and the truck vanished down the road. I stayed where I was, watching the dust settle. I could have just left. I should have left, but I didn't. I still told myself it was nothing. Just some idiot messing around. It was late, sure, but that's when people do stupid shit. I turned back toward my car, figuring I'd call it a day and head out. But just as I reached the edge of the parking lot, I heard it again. The truck. I stopped dead in my tracks. My heart slammed against my ribs as I slowly turned back around. This time, the engine loud enough to make the ground shake. I wasn't sure it was just a coincidence. It was too much. I hadn't even been gone 5 minutes. Why the hell would that truck come back? I stepped off the road and into the trees, moving quietly, trying to hide behind the cover of the thick brush. I didn't know what I was doing. The headlights swept over the area, lingering for a moment before they turned off. Silence fell, but I couldn't relax. Not yet. I waited, breath shallow, my heart racing, every muscle tensed. The truck didn't move for a while. It just sat there. The driver didn't get out again. I didn't know what the hell they were waiting for, but I had no intention of finding out. But then, just when I thought I might be in the clear, the truck started up again. Its tires screeched as it tore off down the road. I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding and stood up, but I wasn't relaxed. Not at all. I made my way back to the parking lot, slowly, cautiously, but my footsteps felt too loud, too heavy. I wasn't just scared, I was being hunted. I reached the parking lot again, but I didn't feel safe. I couldn't explain it. It wasn't just the truck anymore. I started to head back to my truck. I didn't stop until I was behind the wheel, and even then, I could feel it. I threw the truck in gear and took off without looking back. I didn't know the intention of the man, but I knew it was real and creepy as hell.